power of this technology goes so far beyond what like the typical like table conversation about VR gives it credit for. You know, like we talk about it as like a useful tool or an immersive, fun experience, but what we're talking about is like truly transformational.
It should be perfectly possible to trick your brain into any experience if your brain can already do that itself naturally. So VR is almost like taking that ability for our brain to generate any experience for us and like putting it in our hands, which is wild.
Man, that's something in the history books. People are going to look back and be like, yeah, 2022, 2023. That's when education, after hundreds of years, finally upgraded.
We're in a strange time where our physical worlds are intersecting with our digital identities, and right now is a time to kind of determine what you want that to be.
Once you have full body tracking that works well and it's frictionless, right? Meaning it's easy to do.
Yes.
It's a whole new, it's not a game changer, it's a whole new game.
So maybe there will be some other people who would be curious to see what I'm learning, what I'm discovering, so to say. And that's how the Discover YouTube channel started.
Oh, not really disco VR, Discover.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel bad when people ask me about VR, or they're like, what do you do? Like, all right, you asked, here it comes.
I love VR, but I love going out and breathing fresh air. And not only was I stuck in VR for 10 days, I was stuck in one room because I was streaming, the same space. I didn't see the sunlight. I totally lost track of what time everything was.
She dances with the robot. She does the first steps. She dances with that robot. She takes that thing off her fist. I have the video. I'm holding it hostage. She takes it off her head and she says, I gotta have it.
There are a few moments in my life I can remember very vividly. The day I got married, the day my kids were born, the day Facebook announced that they bought Oculus is one of those days. I was making chili.
I've been in a lot of gaming communities, and the VR community is by far the best community that I've ever been involved with.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Between Realities VR podcast. Yeah, good to see ya. Welcome back, everybody. We're back in the saddle. You know, we've got our normal cadence back in action, right? Every Friday. Friday has come to define, or Between Realities has come to define Friday for a lot of us, over these past 4 years.
Definitely has for me.
For me as well, my good sir. And it is a pleasure to be here to celebrate with you all.
Yeah.
It's the weekend is here. Almost.
That it is.
Well, pretty much, right? I mean,
I'm really excited for this weekend. I don't have anything going on, but I think that's why I'm excited.
Yeah. Dude, I have a lot going on this weekend. After the show, I am driving home. I am slapping some stuff into a bag, and then I'm jumping on a plane, going to California, which isn't far from Arizona, but I like to fly because it is like time travel. It's so much faster. And I'm going to hit up Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios tomorrow, which, if you know anything about me, is a big deal because I am a huge Nintendo fan.
I'm so excited to hear your thoughts, man.
I'm stoked.
I want to be, will you please ask your lovely wife to record your exact moment that you walk through that warp pipe? Because I want to see the look on your face.
Okay, yeah,
like she's got to go in front of you.
Okay,
it doesn't even matter that she'll be the first to see it. She has to record the look on your face.
Well, that we may be able to arrange something like this.
Yes.
It's hard for it's hard for me to like stop moments of magic to document them. Like I'm very different. Like it's hard for me to do that.
I know.
But I feel you. It's a historic moment for me.
For sure.
That immersed in Nintendo.
It's so magical. It really is. The first moment you walk in there is so magical.
Dude, I'm stoked. And then immediately after, on the next day, which would be, I guess, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, all 3 days, we're going to do Disneyland and California Adventure.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so I've got like 4 days of immersive theme park action flying in hot.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And for the record, like if you've never been to a theme park like Disneyland, and I guess I can really only speak to Disneyland because I haven't been to a lot of the other ones. It's like VR in its immersiveness. Like
super immersive.
You walk through those gates and it's like the world around you has just disappeared, and you are a citizen of Disneyland. Like you live there now, you know. So it's really cool. Yeah, we're stoked.
It's magical. It really is. You know, I'm not super into Disney stuff usually, but I do love that, especially now. There's all kinds of Marvel stuff and there's Star Wars stuff, and you know, it's a very immersive and beautiful.
Dude, Rise of the Resistance is ridiculous. That ride in Star Wars Land is insane. Like multiple moments where my brain melted. I was like, how did they do that? How am I experiencing this right now? It is that good.
Gamer tag saying the table is looking smaller. That it is.
How did you know
Alex messed with the zoom right before.
Oh, are we looking big?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, we're looking a little big.
We are. That's okay.
Whatever.
We you know, Alex is going to Super Nintendo World, so you know, we ate a few mushrooms.
Oh,
so we got bigger.
It is also completely out of focus. Like,
is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't mess with the focus?
Well, I maybe I did, but in the wrong way.
Oh, I got you.
Should I jump up there and
it's up to you,
and
man.
refocus it?
If you want
to throw it to a please wait screen?
Oh yeah. Let's do that.
Right.
We'll be right back. Let's
Give
try
us
to make this
15
look
seconds.
a little better. Sorry about that.
15 seconds.
BRB. Just kind of checking how this looks. Speaking of immersion, dude, all of it's gone right now.
We talked about this. We talked about this literally right before the show. We were like, hey, you know, like sometimes these technical difficulties happen.
Yeah.
And they just make memorable moments, you know? So whatever, this is what you get. I think it's probably great. It's certainly an improvement. It looks better, right?
Yeah, that part's still before, I think. I think you're still, because here you can, I don't know. It's fine. It's
whatever,
totally fine.
dude.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's good. It's
okay.
good.
So anyway, hey everybody. Welcome to Between Realities, the most professional VR podcast there is. Okay, yeah.
Super pro.
Thank you for joining us. We are live on YouTube right now. It's Friday, May 31st. And it's really exciting because the show's a lot of fun to do. You might be catching this pre-recorded episode on Spotify or one of your favorite audio platforms. If you're an audio listener, shout out to you because we do love you. You know, we appreciate our live viewers. We like the video, but we like our audio listeners as well.
Heck yeah.
We
love you all.
We do. And the Upload VR fam. We are Upload VR correspondents here in Between Realities. So you might be catching this on the front page of Upload VR, which if you are, that's just great too. So thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan, whatever. Look at this. Whatever, man. Quickly, some shout outs before we dive into today's episode. Sean P. Tattoos is who I see as first in chat, who says, hey guys, I just started listening to this show last week and have listened to so many episodes now. Love you guys. Dude, thank you. That's amazing to hear. Like, you know, because it can be difficult to catch a podcast if you're like not catching them live and like in real time, you know? So it really does mean a lot to us that you have like gone back and listened to previous episodes. By the way, if that's your first time hearing about that as like a thing you can do, I think our podcast is one of the best to go back and listen to old episodes with, just because of the amazing guests that we've had over the years. It's always really good to get their perspective. So
I 100% agree with that. I know I'm a little biased, but it's really good because we have people that have worked on so many amazing things, and what they say is still relevant today as it was yesterday. So.
Yeah, and even if it's not, it's almost like a time capsule. You like go back and see that person at that time, and we're like, you know, future tripping about Quest 2 or whatever. You know, like that's just fun. ClassyGrandma is here. Hey, ClassyGrandma, thank you for being here and being a part of our amazing community. Even shout out for the $10 super chat too. Like, wow, that's great.
Jedranko in here, really like pulling out all the stops with his with his saying that he could hear us during the intro, and now screaming out audible.
Dude, you know all the inside jokes. For the record, I was ready this week. No one was catching me with that audio thing this week. I was so ready for it. Qcreator. Oh, by the way, ClassyGrandma said, will you guys, who I adore, still love me even though I have not seen or read Ready Player One? I love you.
Oh,
Skiva,
man.
You gonna let her off the hook?
I'll let her off the hook because she's just such an awesome person. There's nothing Classy could do to make us not love you. So.
There it is. All right. Well, hey, but don't test that, okay, Classy? Because I wouldn't put it past you to get crazy on us. Qcreator's here. He says, hey, VR legends, the weekend. Yep, that is exactly it, bro. The weekend is here. Paradise Decay, my squid brother in-house, saying Sony gave us a kick in the teeth. Yeah,
oh, God,
we might have to touch on that during today's episode for a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
Duggars K, hey, everybody. What's up, man? Good to see you. Virtual Steve, hey, everyone. Yo, shout out Virtual Steve. Go subscribe to his channel. His live streams are way better than you even realize. Like, for real. Go look at what he does. It's really good. Laszlo 216, Cleveland Heights represent. That's right, dude. That's right. We got Cleveland Heights in the house. Beat Saberita, hello. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of our Between Realities family. It means a lot to us. VR Catalans, just hitting all the inside jokes like we said earlier. Mahina's here. Hey, Mahina. That is a past episode you should go back and check out. Is Mava from Beyond Frames.
Heck yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's
Ava is one of my favorite people in the industry. She's amazing.
Yeah,
she really is.
She for sure. Easy Breezy VR. Hey, what's up, Easy Breezy VR? Thank you for being here and being a part of the squad. Tribe Grey Wolf is in house as well. Good to see you, Tribe.
What's up, Tribe?
We love you.
Heck yeah.
Gamertag VR, the homie.
GT. What's up, buddy?
GT. Ask, have I tried Ocarina on Quest? No, but holy crap, that looks amazing. Is it? I'm assuming it's the full game, rather than just like Kokiri Forest. You can confirm, hopefully. That looks amazing. I watched your video and I was blown away. I have to do that. Mrs. Grey Wolf is also here. The whole tribe.
Hey,
we've got the entire tribe of the Grey Wolves here. Joy Rain VR and Jay Dunn, both in the house. Get him to the Metaverse, which, by the way, we should mention. Shout out Get Him to the Metaverse. Finalists in the category for Best Content Creator of the Year in this year's Augie Awards. Right across from Between Realities, baby.
Heck yeah.
Boom. We are so stoked to be sharing a finalist position in the 2024 Augies this year for Best Content Creator.
Man, I really hope those guys take it. They're just so good. They're so good. As much as I would love to have that cool Augie trophy in my hands, those guys just deserve the world. They really
sometimes when you watch like Master Chef or like American Idol or whatever, like you see the two people on stage and they're like so stoked to get the award, and like they both really want to win, and then one of them becomes announced and you see the other one like go and hug them and like almost celebrate in that moment, but also they were their competition, and you're like, how authentic was that? Like, are you really authentically celebrating with that person, or are you dying inside because you took second and you didn't get that $250,000 prize? I would legitimately be celebrating if Get Him to the Metaverse.
Me too. Me too.
Or getting things done, I guess, is probably a better way to put it.
Heck
so,
yeah.
We'll be right next to you guys in the audience for that, and we're stoked about it. Anyway, let's start to get into stuff here, okay? We have a guest today. Because that's what we do here on Between Realities. We always have an amazing guest from within the world of virtual reality, and this is a conversation that we don't get to have very often. Audio in VR experiences is such a huge part of the package. I mean, for a lot of VR experiences, it's audio visual.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the majority of that's probably the most powerful of our senses in real life as well. So it really brings up immersion to have great sound as well as great visuals.
Frankly, it can make or break an experience.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And when it's done right, sometimes it's done so well that like you literally you don't pay attention. Like you're just like, oh yep, this is what it's supposed to be, and you don't really think about all the work that goes in to like make that magical moment for you.
Yep.
And today on the show we have the person responsible for that in some of our favorite VR games.
100%.
Yes. Especially some near and dear to Skiva's heart.
Oh, dude, I know. I can't wait. I'm so excited for this episode.
Yes. So,
I really am.
Most notably from the Vertigo Games titles After the Fall and Arizona Sunshine 2.
And 1.
And one, sure, yeah, both of them. Help us in join me in welcoming today's guest to Between Realities, Jonathun van Den Wijngaarden. Hey, Jonathun, what's up, dude?
Hey guys, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, my pronunciation was okay. Dude,
yeah, thanks for having me on the show. That's great.
Absolutely, man. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. I'd be willing to bet that 99% of our chat has played one of the games that you are directly responsible for making some of that audio magic that we were just talking about. So thank you so much for not only your contributions to the space, but also for taking the time to join us today. We appreciate you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And yeah, that's pretty crazy to actually realize now that you're saying that. Yeah, those are some very deeply loved games that I got to work on. So I feel very fortunate on being able to craft these experiences for people, and just having a very immersive and good time in VR. It's a lot of fun to do.
You'll notice the vibe in this room has just changed since Jonathun has entered the space. This music is creating a feeling and an emotion for me that didn't exist previously. And that is insane. Like, for the record, let me say, I am a music person. Like, I love music. Like, I am like, I'm kind of a nerd about it, like the second it becomes mainstream or popular, I'm out, like if you haven't heard of it, I'm trying to hear it, like I'm definitely like a deep cut kind of guy. I listen to a lot of instrumental music and like post-rock stuff, like stuff that like pulls on the heartstrings and makes you feel things. And, video game music has always had a special place in my heart, like I've personally never felt that like you need like lyrical content to land and like convey the feeling or the message that you're trying to portray, and video game music has always done such a good job of that over the years. So I have a deep appreciation for what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I have similar experiences as not just as a composer, but also obviously as somebody who really deeply loves all sorts of different kind of music. And I think I can safely say that, my love for music has been brought to a whole different level once I discovered how much I actually love listening to soundtracks, film scores firstly, and then game music as well. So I have sort of like a similar experience where, sometimes you don't really need any lyrics to convey or to steer you in a certain direction. I think game music and to a certain extent as well, film music has the uniqueness that it can actually communicate certain feelings and certain experiences without having to be very extremely in your face about it. And I think that's pretty cool. That's what makes it actually, as art, very enjoyable for me as well.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in video game music, like that's a very special like approach to the song that you have to take, right? To your point, like it can't be too in your face because it needs to kind of be like contributing to the scene rather than defining it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, and it's something that obviously grows over time as you work in video games longer and you work on music for games longer. I think the biggest difference is that, and it's something I try to do with my scores, is sort of, pick the emotion and the mood that you want to go for, and then sort of maintain that same state over time without, going in different kind of directions, but still keeping the music interesting enough. Which obviously, if you listen to, more commercial music in that sense, or music with lyrics, it has a certain build up, and it's actually going anywhere. It's building up to a climax. And for game music, you're sort of like hitting the climax constantly. It needs to sit there, be there all of the time, but it should not necessarily, punch you in the face with it.
Right.
So sometimes that can be a challenge. I think it's a fun challenge. But I've heard, composers trying their first hand at scoring games as finding one of those things the most difficult things to deal with.
Totally. I mean, as a musician myself, actually, that's a great point that I never really even considered. Like, you really are always building towards a climax when you're writing music traditionally. And when you're doing video game stuff, you need to be able to, like, stop it like on a dime if the scene changes, or like it needs to be able to flow into the other music scenes that exist here and there. And
yeah, the music needs to be able to dynamically change in a lot of cases. When something in the game starts happening, the song can't just predict at a certain time when that thing's going to happen, right? It has to be able to change real smoothly in a dynamic way, which must be very difficult to kind of make music that can transition like that on the fly.
You know what I think about
Can be.
is Mario Kart.
You know,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jonathun.
Yeah, no, it dawned on me, very early days when I was working with the Vertigo team on After the Fall, and we were working the first prototype. And we were coming from Arizona sunshine, where we had, background music that was not extremely responsive. So we had, more of a combat music approach, and we would pick certain pocket fights where we said, okay, this is higher intensity, so we're going to swap to something that has, a bit more drive to it. And then we were working on After the Fall, which, was a game that was more instant in its approach. So at first we had a music approach where we would go, okay, we have exploration music, and now we get some sort of tension stinger, and then we get to build towards combat. But that wasn't the gameplay approach, right? So especially if you play the game now, but it's always been there since the very first prototype, it's pretty instant. You get a lot of enemies on screen really quick. And it would take a long time for the music to build, and we needed a lot of different kind of intensity layers. And it was kind of like a fun approach for that score, and I think it worked pretty well, and I'm pretty proud of it, that we had a more of an instant layered approach where we could go from, run our save room, very low-key, almost ambient kind of music, and then sort of almost instantly build to the highest intensity level, because that's, especially with, having procedural spawn systems and all whatnot, what the team was doing. So we could go from a very low-key synthwave kind of track, John Carpenter feel, to, very high up there with drums and big percussion, which I thought was, at first it was a challenge going there. And once I found the approach and the sound to it, it sort of stuck, and it was a really fun process to get to that point, and getting it into the game, and having all of these gameplay elements actually influence the intensity of the music, and then playing the game, and then feeling that the music is actually underlining what's on screen. And sometimes it makes for interesting surprise moments for me as well as a composer, because you're sort of guiding it, and then you're getting it into the game and scripting it, and then it actually gets into action, and it has a life of its own because the player's driving it. It's pretty close to magic in that sense to me. Yeah, as a composer.
Sure. Yeah, one thing, like I said, I've always paid close attention to music in games, and some games have music like intrinsically woven into the fabric of the gameplay elements, like Ocarina of Time, for example, like we just mentioned. But I think about Nintendo often because I think Nintendo does a great job with a lot of this stuff. And one thing I've always really loved and appreciated is through the menus of Mario Kart, like when you hit the first title screen, it's like kind of like chill, it's like a nice little drum beat, maybe some pads going, and then when you click through to like single player, multiplayer, the next screen, like there's like layers that are being added, now there's like a snare that's coming into the drums, like starts to pick up a little bit, and then you get one step closer to the race, and they add additional, and it like grows and grows every time you like advance through a menu. And I've always really appreciated that, because it's like there's almost like 5 or 6 simultaneous versions of that song that live, and they like stack on top of each other as you navigate through the menus. And it's like stuff that you wouldn't imagine you'd have to do when you write a song. Like you write a song and you have the one version of it, not the intensity 1 through 6 version of that song. It's cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Nintendo is a very great example, and they have some very, Super Mario Odyssey was crazy in its audio and dynamic audio approach, and having certain sound design elements be in tune with the music, and then changing, and depending on whichever track you would be listening to, that kind of stuff. And talking Mario Kart, the audio design, and how everything influences the music, and how you get additional layers if something is happening on screen, and then we get the final round, and then it speeds up, and we get you get shrunken down, and then we get a different version of the it's crazy. And that kind of stuff is it does make writing that kind of music harder because all of these elements, they have to be taken into play. But I think the reward is definitely huge once, it's one of the things when you're a composer working on a music piece, you've heard it hundreds of times over until it's finished, it's properly mixed and produced, so it goes into your game. So you never get that first impact moment and experience, right? Because it's numbing you down. The music is numbing you down, and you're only listening to the stuff that is not entirely right to your ears and could have been done better. And that's actually the fun thing with adaptive music. It goes into the game and then it gets a life of its own, and sometimes you get to experience certain moments for the first time. Hearing it come together as players would playing it, and for me that's always a very fun time getting it into the game. After writing it and seeing it connect, hopefully. But if it does, that's just a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, I definitely want to dive more into some of the ins and outs of audio design and composing music for games, but I want to pump the brakes a little bit. And I'm curious, is there a video game song or soundtrack that started it for you? You're a kid, and all of a sudden you hear this song in a game, and you're like, I love this song, and it kind of do you think maybe might have been the catalyst for your career?
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I grew up in the golden era of also PC gaming and console wars between Sega and Nintendo, obviously. So video game music was everywhere. The very first game that triggered my interest in a sense of, okay, this is not just the music that I like from a game, but also outside of the game, was the original Command & Conquer game. Playing the game and hearing music that you would normally hear on the radio, hearing all sorts of different kind of music influences as well that I was not fully exposed yet at that age. Hearing a blend between techno and hip hop, and then there was metal, and there was orchestral, and there was all of these things, industrial, so flawlessly combined, and they made for great songs, and they would put you in a certain state for the game and hype you up for playing a game. And it was kind of like the moment where I felt, okay, this feels bigger to me. The impact is bigger to me than just video game music, which I already was, a big fan of. And I would that was the first game where I would put the game on, and they would have Westwood Studios would have these jukeboxes where you could select a track, and I would play a track and put it on cassette tape, so I can actually listen to it in my Walkman outside of the game. Because it was music that was on its own. It was already a lot of fun, and it brought good memories of playing a game.
There was a kid who I went to elementary school with, and middle school and high school I went to school with, who was the class nerd, I guess. He was kind of pegged as that, not a popular kid, played a lot of video games, which he wasn't the only kid who did, but he was, he was that guy, you know what I mean? And we were on the school bus one day, and he was wearing headphones, listening to a Walkman, a cassette tape, and somebody was like, hey, Aaron, what are you listening to? And he's like, video game music. And they're like, what? It's video game music. What? It's video game music. And everybody ridiculed him, everyone's like, oh, he's listening to video game music, and he had just taped his TV, put the Legend of Zelda in, recorded the Legend of Zelda song and playing it back in his ears, and everybody gave him a hard time. And this was I was probably 10 or something like that, so probably late 90s, and nowadays that he would be cool for listening to that kind of stuff, those inorganic sounds have become a staple of what people listen to today. Now the beeps and boops that were only existing on 8-bit consoles or 16-bit consoles are now fundamental parts of a lot of really popular music, so shout out to Aaron, man. I'm sorry you went through that, dude. You were actually cooler than everybody else at that time.
He was before his time.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. I felt similar to Aaron in that aspect. but the fun thing is, out of that fallout, that when I was a bit older, I got in touch with the composer Frank Lepaki, telling him I was a huge fan of the stuff that he did for Westwood Studios, and he did all kinds of other stuff like Lands of Lore and Curandia series, and something really connected in his music and the way he did it. And he, that sort of grew my own dream of, maybe I want to create music. Maybe I want to, start shaping worlds with, my own musical input. And he became my mentor over the course of a couple of years in sort of coaching me, and I kept sending him my own, sketches and, god-awful music that I was creating. And he would be providing feedback and trying to, steer me in directions and give me pointers and teach me about certain pieces of software that I could check out and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun that one game that's sort of, and we're still good friends after all these years. It's a fun story that one game sort of, like you say, triggered that one moment where I thought, okay, this feels like more like a live destination than just a temporary stop for me. This is bigger; it has a bigger impact. And it's a fun memory that I have.
That is so cool. There are like multiple things about that are insanely cool. Like,
dude,
you fell in love with this game soundtrack and then became homies with the guy who made it. That's insane. It's also insane to me that you were not a musician previously. Like, you literally are a video game music composer. Like,
I did take music lessons growing up. I learned to play keys. But although I did really like, actually creating music, I wasn't really a big fan of playing existing music. It didn't really, like the thing you mentioned, putting up, a lot of the songs that I would be playing would be songs that would have lyrics to them. So it would be just playing, accompanying the lyrics that went with the original song, and it was lacking for me somehow. And I think the whole element of video game music on creating a world, you're creating a certain immersive experience that is, back then for me, it was lacking in regular music, and I found it in video game music. And I think that's what I connected with, and that sort of, triggered me, and I can create my own worlds and create my own feelings and moods and settings, in that sense, stuff that I find cool. And also, of course, and that's something that video game music is really good at, is picking different elements from different genres, not getting stuck in one single genre, but being creative and getting a hip hop beat and then combine it with heavy metal, or I worked on a game I think 10 years ago or 15 years ago, maybe even. And then a studio came to me and said, we want to have a soundtrack that is a blend between Beastie Boys and Queens of the Stone Age, so come up with something. We'll talk to you next week.
No pressure.
Those kind of bold things, that's the stuff I really like. There's no boundaries. There's just your imagination and what you can come up with.
There's a quote on your website that I really like, and it says, "Every piece of music is as much about telling a story as it is about evoking emotion." And it seems like that really has been the approach that you've taken to all of the music creation that you've done for these games over the years.
Yeah, there's, that's one statement that I can make, that every single piece of music that I put into a game, it does evoke something in me, like emotionally or in terms of mood or whatever. There's never any piece of music, there's not a second of music in there that to me feels like filler or something that needs to be there just because it needs to be there. And if that resonates with players, if you get the feeling that players get the similar experience, that's the best payoff that there can be with this job. It's definitely,
Hell yeah. shout out Substatica in the chat, Corporate Zombie who's just joining us. Hello, Brandon VR sliding in here, as well as a little creeper Betty. Hey Betty,
hey,
how you doing?
What's up, y'all?
Red Slash Ace also joining us. Silver Nexus 2, Ryan B. We've got people joining us as we've been going around. Also Space Denizen, what's up, man? Good to see you. There are a couple of good things in the chat that I feel like we should pull into the conversation before we kind of like shift gears here. First one I'll say from Substatica, he says, hit us with some of his personal musical influences, right? So what are some of your personal musical influences, I guess, outside of this game soundtrack that kind of kicked it all off? Like maybe the stuff that you're into or that you listen to a lot that you can tell is showing up in your work.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of musical scores, obviously film scores and game scores that I really love. Like you guys, I grew up on Nintendo and Sega, so there's always, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan. I think I bought every single game since Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. I still, make a habit out of it whenever they come with a new game, get the collector's edition and take a splurge and get as much gear and stuff, the merch that I can get from the game. So there's definitely always those elements are in there.
For the record, the Link's Awakening music is so good. Like I love the Link's Awakening soundtrack. It is so good.
Yeah, I mean that might even be prior to Command and Conquer. It was one of the scores that really, and we're talking about a Game Boy game.
I know.
It has so much emotion in there, and
it's crazy because it's like beeps and boops, but your brain is filling in the gaps. Like you hear a Game Boy making beeps at you, but your brain is literally like interpreting a symphony. Like how does that happen?
And some of those dungeon themes, there are like, I don't know, maybe 8-bar long repetitive notes. And you sort of feel inside of these, it's crazy, and it's still one of the actually recently I was able to grab a bootleg record that has the original score on it in a video game collectors group that I'm in Facebook. So I've started getting into vinyl collection, and some of those classic video games, they're being done in bootlegs where fans, take the original stuff and then, create
get it pressed,
final pressings out of it. So that's one of those scores that's really close. There's, I do like a lot of different kind of musical influences. Like we talked after Fall, definitely John Carpenter has been a huge influence on that score. And I think you can actually, you can pretty much hear that in every single track. But for me, when we're talking about synthesizers and thriller / horror scores, I think he's unique in that sense. He has this certain, I can't even explain it, but it has this certain dreadfulness and sadness to his music, and it's in tonality, but chord progressions and musical instruments. So when the team came to me and said, we're going to do something that has 80s vibe to it, and we want to go with synthesizers. I leaped up and I said, this is tell me no more.
Yeah, like, perfect.
When do we get started? So yeah, that's definitely also, but it can range from a lot of different things. I love listening to heavier stuff like Prodigy. I love bands like Depeche Mode. I love bands like Jamiroquai, which is obviously a lot more funk. I do love the stuff that Trent Reznor does. A lot of his stuff influences are, in my more ambient approach music. So, it's all over the place. It's very versatile, and recently one of the more newer bands, The Weeknd is great. I can really enjoy listening to those.
Nice.
Those songs, which are more in the pop range, but so very well produced and having good vocals, and So yeah, whatever I feel like at that moment in time, and all of those influence, obviously, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
If you listen carefully, you can hear them in some of my music as well.
That is awesome, and I'm sure we have a few people who are probably, what's the word when you're into gear, like a gear file? What is that?
I'll go with that.
Yeah, gear file. I don't know. It's like an audio file, but a gear file. Yeah, anyway, what makes up the core of like your gear, right? Like what synthesizer are you using? Like if somebody wanted to like maybe get up and running, what are like the few core pieces that you have over there?
So here in the background is my ARP 2600. It's a reissue done by Korg a couple of years ago. And actually I got it in just before or somewhere at around the time when we were getting started on After the Fall. And I did the main sequence, the main repeating sequence that is in the main theme on that synthesizer. I have a couple more synths here. There's a Prophet 5, there's an OB6, so it's a lot of the classic analog stuff, a lot of Moog stuff as well. I tend to always have a synthy or electronic element into my music because I think it contributes something, it adds texture to it, and doesn't always have to be super electronic sounding. It can be just, if you listen to Arizona Sunshine 2, you'll be surprised that I think roughly 50% of that score, or maybe even more, is done on synthesizers. But it's low key in the background, setting the mood, having bass loops and that kind of stuff. So for me, it's very interesting finding new kind of textures, not going with what we already know, but sort of move beyond that and try to find an angle to it that sets it apart from anything else, because every single game world obviously is unique, a unique place to be. And I think I owe it to the game designers and the studios to come up with something that is has a certain edge to it that is just for this game. So
absolutely. I mean, a lot of games are defined by what they sound like. Like you get into level 1 and bam, that music, that defines that game for you. You hear that melody and you are immediately transported back to the experience. So that's
what happened to me with After the Fall. I mean, really, all of Jonathun's games specifically, like, immediately captured me because that sound came in, man, and it just grabbed me. It made me feel a certain way, and it was absolutely amazing. And speaking of being able to do that, so studios usually employ many people. It could be hundreds. It could be, it could be a lot of people working on a game. People working on animation. People working on textures and mechanics. All of these people contribute to the game equally, and all these things have to kind of form this perfect thing to make this great game. But one of the things that could absolutely trash a whole game is if the person composing the soundtrack for it doesn't do a good job, right? You can all of that work could be lost, right? And you all of a sudden are not transported the way you should be. You don't feel what the director of the game was hoping that you would feel, and the whole thing could be lost. So what kind of pressure is on you when you have all these people working on this stuff and they come to you and go, okay, we need some music, man. You gotta work this magic and bring us to this place. What are you feeling? Are you freaked out? Are you excited? How do you feel during that?
A mixture of both, I guess, because I don't need a lot of input in order for my creative juices to get flowing and start getting all sorts of ideas. And I sort of learn to keep that at bay somewhat and first check with the team and see what they want to do and which direction they want to go. Because if I sort of superimpose my own ideas, it's their baby. Sometimes they've been working on it for a longer period of time already and they have certain ideas. And I don't want to be the person that comes crashing in and says, your baby's going to be wearing these kind of t-shirts because it's going to be, it's going to be a skater, or it's going to be, it's going to be an R&B kind of person. So, that's the first step. And then I always find it I've learned to sort of keep this in check when I'm writing. I try to sort of not let that pressure to be too much on the surface, because it can be pretty blocking and blocking your creative flow. But getting the first pieces of music to a team starting on a new project, that's always the scariest, right? So I actually experienced that with the 2 titles that I shipped last year with Vertigo, where we went from doing a sequel to the first Arizona game. And at first I thought, well, cool, I get back to what I've done before, and sort of, reinvent that and try to spin it and give it something new. And then it sort of dawned on me, but how far am I going to be able to spin this in order to not move away from what the original did? Because obviously the team is working on part 2, so they are expecting this similar kind of feel to it.
Right.
But I don't want to, start rehashing and redoing the stuff I've done before, because that's not really interesting for me as a composer, obviously. And this time around, we had a far more emotional story to cover as well. So there was a lot more, it felt a bit more mature in a sense, like not a story that would go in different kind of directions, still would have the, the great humor that the original had, but we had to show the affection between the main character and his dog, and then sort of stuff happening. And Rob Yescom had already written some of those elements and some of those sections of the game. And I thought, whoa, this is kind of challenging, because now I have to come up with something that to me feels new enough for a sequel, but also instantly feels like Arizona Sunshine.
Right.
So that was a scary one. So writing the first track, the first track I wrote, I think on the soundtrack is called Machete Shuffle, which was the track that we wrote for the urban area, I think, a combat track, and I was very relieved to find that the team would recognize these original elements from the game and really loved that I would sort of move the combat slightly more into a groovy kind of feel. So that was cool.
That's awesome.
And the other project that I worked on, or we shipped last year on the 7 Guests, that was a whole different story, because when I heard that they wanted to do this VR remake of the original, and I was on board for music, I felt pretty intimidated, because I know the original, and the original back in the day was pretty iconic. It has a very legendary score by George Sanger, which is no small name in video game music. So that was kind of that was a kind of different experience, where I felt, okay, whichever I'm going to do right now, there's going to be a lot of people are going to be focused on how this is going to be executed, not in the least by the team itself, because Paul, who was the lead producer on the project, he was a very big fan, and we go back quite some years, and we worked at the last studio that I worked at, the game development studio, a local here, and I knew we would be having these conversations where he said, one of these days I want to sort of do a remake of this game, because he was a huge fan of the 7 Guests. So he was sort of my first in that sense, person to go to and check how my music would land with a fan, right? So I had like instant response from him, and if he liked the music, then so I spent a lot of time listening and going through the original and trying to distill the elements that would make the original as iconic as it was, pick the main themes that were being used, and sort of move from there and try to do something new that felt new and original, but would still be a pure homage and a tribute to the work that's been done before. For me, that was the first time working on, incorporating material from somebody else, and then making it my own and trying to do something new with it. And that was first a scary approach, but also a lot of fun to do.
That's awesome. And everyone who's tried The Seventh Guest in VR loves that game. Like, I have never heard a review of that game that somebody was like, nah, it wasn't for me. Like, everybody who's been in there has loved it.
I was nervous getting in there because The Seventh Guest was one of the first like real video games that I played, and it like back on DOS on the PC, like way back in the day. That's man crazy. And that game just like immersed me, like, you know, it was one of my first real game immersion moments in my life, right? It was so good. And when I heard Vertigo was going to be doing a remake, man, that was exciting. And it was scary at the same time because, you know, when something new comes like that, it can if it's not done well, it can kind of taint your memories from yesteryears, right?
Which happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like people botch remakes all the time. Shout out Mateo311. What's up, dude? Shout out Mr. Lord Beavis. Good to see you as well. And MickeyBerr. Thank you for tuning in. We're happy to have you guys here with us.
Heck yeah. Thanks, guys.
Also, Snowtoad with the super chats and becoming a member for 11 months. Only one more month of membership, Snowtoad. All right. And then you're going to be rocking the golden Between Realities logo.
Nice. Very nice.
And, you know, by the way, Jonathun, I just want to mention this. Like, you're talking about iconic scores in video games. Like, in VR, we don't have like a huge library of games to choose from if we're going to start to try to identify iconic scores in music. But on the incredibly short list, maybe at the top of most people's, that Juggernaut theme in After the Fall is like iconic. Like and by the way, look at what Skiva has here, folks. That is a pressing of vinyl of the After the Fall soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
with Jonathun's name on the bottom of it on the front.
Oh yeah, signed and everything. Look at that.
That's extremely legit.
There's actually let me shoehorn a little promo in there. I think I have roughly around 5 left on my Bandcamp page. Really like the really last ones, so there's no substitute. So if anything happens during shipping, of course I'll refund any damages done. But you know, these are really the last ones. They were originally done as a fun thing for the team. They were given out to the development team, and you know, I had a small box of my own that I was able to get to the fans, and actually also send out to some of the people that were influential in my career. So I thought it was a good moment having something tangible, because a lot of games these days, especially in VR, we don't get pretty boxes anymore, and it's all only digital. So having something tangible that had my music on it, I thought it was a great moment to give a little thanks to the people who supported that process. So
if anyone's listening, pump the brakes. All right, give me until tonight to order this, and then you are all welcome to get the remaining 4. But I'm going to need one of these. So if you're listening and you're interested in this, obviously this is a very limited opportunity to get one of these After the Fall LPs. But yeah, just wait until tomorrow, because I need to go home and order one, so I make sure I get one.
This hangs on my wall right next to my desk where I work insane amounts of hours all the time, and it just makes me happy to see it, because I am serious when I tell you that I love After the Fall, and I worked at Vertigo when this game was being developed. I had some limited input on the game during its development, and I love this game. Like, I love the score of this game. Everything about this game. It's one of my all-time favorite video games. Dude, not just VR games. All-time favorite video games, period.
Is that Juggernaut theme not iconic?
Dude.
It is. Like, you hear that and like, everything changes. It's like, whoa, like now my head is on a swivel. I'm like, where is it? And like, I can't rest until I hear that like sound that concludes it,
Yeah, he's one of those enemies that like, he's slow, but if you're not paying attention, you're gonna get picked up by the throat, and he's gonna pick you up and kill you.
Those moments when you're dumping clips into his head while he's holding you, you're like, ah!
Oh god, it's so good. It's so good.
I mean, it was a lot of fun to write that theme. I think that's one. When the team initially explained to me how this enemy was going to work, and his threat level comes especially from being such a tough enemy. That you can see coming from afar, and you can hear coming from afar as well. I wanted to have a piece of music that sort of instantly, strikes your nerves and gets you anxious to look around and find out where he's coming from and how to take him down. So I sort of took the Jaws approach there, where I wanted to have a motive that keeps repeating, and it sort of feels like it's closing in and it getting more and more and more close to the player. So yeah, it's fun to hear that it actually sticks, because I spend a lot of time getting that right and getting it to feel right, and also to make sure that it punches through everything else that's happening all of the time, right. Because that was a huge challenge on that game, having VR headsets with their limited dynamic range on the headset. A lot of people still play without headphones, so they use the internally built-in speakers. And then we have I've never really counted them, but there's a lot of enemies on screen all of the time. And then there's 4 players walking around, and you can have, dual guns, dual machine guns if you want, firing, and then there's also the characters screaming stuff at each other, and then the music has to come through because you have to hear this juggernaut coming. So that was quite a challenge. So all of the musical pieces were sort of designed to punch through as well, have their own iconic thing where the smasher is very percussive and big and has a lot of drums to it, and has this typical smasher kind of groove, walk cycle feel to it. And then the juggernaut is the opposite, like it's a big huge enemy, and it sort of is creeping in there during gameplay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's always fun to hear that it sticks.
So is it all music with you? Like, is it just like you're composing musical tracks, or do you get involved with like sound effects or like other elements of audio design?
Yeah, I'm the sort of crazy person who tries to do it all.
Really? So like when you need like a grunt, you're like going through all the just like picking the right grunt for the right moment?
For the original Arizona Sunshine, I did all the zombie voices, so that's me.
You did all the zombie voices?
Oh, no way!
That's awesome. How was that? Is that good?
That was pretty good.
That's one of the things that I said, if we're going to do a sequel, we got to have people in there who are far better at this than I am. So we got a great cast. Some of the cast, actually, that's a fun fact, were reused voice actors from After the Fall. So, we got back to them and said, there's no lines for you this time, but we have this huge spreadsheet of zombie emotions that we want you to record.
Zombie emotions?
So, yeah, we had a spreadsheet, and I thought I want to go beyond just the regular gnarling sounds, and we have these hazmat zombies. If you listen carefully to their idle noises, they will, mumble certain lines that sort of reflect what they were doing at that point in time. But we had zombies catching fire. We have zombies, getting hit. We have zombies noticing the player and getting alerted. We have all sorts of different kind of idle states for the zombies as well. So I wanted to, go a lot deeper, and we have a lot of VO recorded for that game. But other than that, as well as the Seventh Guest and Arizona Sunshine 2, I did most of the sound design, if not all the sound design, and the music as well. And similar, same for After the Fall as well.
So yeah, that's insane. I mean, because like sometimes I see people like working on stuff like this, and you see them like in a recording studio, like brushing feathers over a pile of gravel to like get in certain sounds and stuff like that. Like, do you do any of that, or do you like have people for that?
No. There's obviously I've built a huge library over the years as well. So there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of, I like to refer to as my tubes of paint, where I can just start painting with all the different kind of sound and elements that I have in there.
Right, like you don't need to re-record a pistol for every single game.
Yeah, not every single thing. And pistols and gunshots, obviously, that those are more professionally recorded libraries, but they are, they're not game ready. They're not in that sense, not fun to listen to. If you ever listen to a gun being fired in real life, it's not really that enticing. So it needs a lot of work. I think I spent a year and a half doing iteration on the weapons for After the Fall. It took a long time to get those right. It was the first time that Vertigo was doing manual reload entirely. We had more of an automated reload on Arizona, the first Arizona game. So making that feel right, especially on weapons like shotguns, where normally in a game you get this really nice reload animation, but now there's pulling back, and the player can actually hold there and not pull the other direction, and you don't get this typical shotgun reload kind of feel to it, right? So all of these sounds, they should sound really cool to the player, even if they sort of not follow standard practice on these weapons. And I think we sort of perfected that a whole bit on Arizona 2, where personally I'm really happy with how the weapons turn out in that game. I think they have the right amount of impact, and they work pretty well. And obviously Arizona 2 had a lot more space to have everything punched through. Like After the Fall is, it's mayhem.
Yeah.
Especially if it gets really crazy.
Which it always will.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
A very important sound for me in a game, especially like After the Fall or even Arizona Sunshine, is the headshot sound. It's always it always has like a distinct sound to it, because you have to know when you're getting those critical hits. Some of these games, like a zombie game, really rely on you being able to hit good headshots. So some of these sounds, when you get a headshot, are just so incredibly satisfying, right? That you just want to like really push extra hard for those extra headshots. Like how do you come up with the sound? Like when you really analyze these sounds of headshots, a lot of times they don't even make any sense, but they feel so good when they happen, right? These pops, these thumps, these
like arbitrary.
Yeah. But it's so important. It's so critical to the gameplay.
Yeah. I was already pretty happy with the original headshot that we had in Arizona 1. I spent a lot of time sort of tweaking that, and then I took that experience and translated it to After the Fall, and then again took that experience and translated it to Arizona 2. But I think my main intent was, making sure that it has impact, so it should feel powerful. But it should also not feel too repetitive, right? So it should not, it sort of should always sort of stay fresh, but still have that recognizable impact moment and that satisfaction. And that's basically, doing a lot of iteration, checking it in game and seeing how it feels. Also, an important aspect is, loudness in the mix. How does it stand out from the other sounds? Does it use certain frequency materials that get in the way of something else? So one of the things that I did for those games was regular impacts, they don't have a lot of low end to it, so you don't really you can actually hear the splashy and kind of fleshy sounds to it, but they don't really have that big punch that you get, and a lot of the times you don't need it, right? So if you're firing a machine gun at a zombie a couple of meters away, a lot of the times you won't be paying attention to the actual impact sounds. They are there, but they're not the main focus because you're firing your weapon. You want to sort of get that response. But for headshots, because they pack such a punch, they're a lot meatier in that sense. They stick out in the mix no matter what you're doing, no matter which weapon you're firing. And they're always, pretty loud considered what they are. And I think that's a couple of those elements that, work well. That's, one of the things I'm pretty proud of that work pretty well. And one of the things that the team really likes in the games as well. I know the development team has always said, and, when we were working in Arizona 2, they said, we need a similar kind of headshot feel.
It's got to feel good. It's got to be juicy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what else feels good to me, as far as one of the sounds in After the Fall, is the nuke sound. When you throw that nuke and it goes, and then the explosion that it makes, so much different than any grenade sound or any. It's like one of my favorite sounds in a game. Did you also create the nuke sound?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's, nice. One of the things that like I love when I see like behind the scenes, like I was talking about like that sound booth, footage that you sometimes see, or like when you see behind the scenes of Star Wars and they're showing you how they made the lightsaber sound, putting an electric shaver in a metal bowl and swimming around in there. Like, are there any like cool tricks or things that you did to achieve some certain sounds that you think people would maybe find interesting?
Let me think for a moment. Yeah. I mean, there are so many sounds that go into a game. When I was working on the 7th guest, I felt that, going through the mansion and having all the different kind of sounds, I thought, how am I going to create sound effects that feel supernatural, have this supernatural element to it, but don't feel like I'm walking in some sort of, theme park attraction in Disney World, right? So it should feel scary, but grounded in realism. So I went for an approach where I have a lot of vocal samples embedded into specific actions that result in something. So solving a puzzle piece, or getting a certain item, or unlocking a certain thing. There's always this breathy kind of ghost-like element into it, very subtly, that sort of ties all of these sounds together. That I think in the end worked really well in constantly making the player aware that this is not your ordinary mansion. There's a lot of more weird stuff happening. But in terms of recording kinds of stuff, it's all over the place, and sometimes that's the funny thing of it. And that's one of the things that I love about sound design, and Star Wars is a great example, because Ben Burtt, the sound designer, does this a lot, is taking real life sounds that have nothing to do with the object that you're trying to make a sound for, and then use elements of that sound to create something new, like the lightsaber, for example. But there's so many examples in Star Wars and in his films where if you listen to the sound, it doesn't make any sense, like TIE fighter sounds, or there's so many of those examples in those movies, and I think that's super fun, getting certain sounds. And sometimes there are happy accidents where you have you're going through something you've recorded, or you record something and think whoa, this is pretty awesome, this works really well.
I wasn't trying for that, but actually let's use it.
yeah, exactly. So it's just a really cool sound, and then all of a sudden, now that I've recorded it up close, or a certain direction, or in certain environment, it sounds super scary, and it's pretty weird. And that's all part of the journey, and trying to go there. I did a lot of that kind of stuff for the soundscapes in After the Fall, which sadly a lot of the time they get buried in whatever is happening on screen. Right. But if you stick around for a longer period of time after a wave has been finished, you will hear all sorts of weird noises and stuff happening all across the different kind of areas. And it's a lot of fun to do, taking spooky elements and sort of incorporating them into the soundscape where they feel like they could live in that world and they make sense of the world.
I love it. Yeah, we're going to start to wrap this up here pretty soon. But Paradise Decay gave us a super chat earlier and asked a great question.
Oh, yeah. That is a good one.
Asking about AI. As an artist, obviously I'm sure you're aware that there are AI things that exist now where you can basically just give it a prompt and it'll spit out whatever kind of song you're asking for.
Udio.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How finger on the pulse are you with this? And like, what are your opinions as an artist and somebody who's built their career making original music pieces?
Yeah, that's a good and struggling topic. Mm-hmm. I think there's two sides to this that I've sort of, over the last, I think, 2 years that AI has taken a flight. We've seen this with, artwork as well. I think the one thing that AI is lacking, and, even if it's getting better and it's getting closer to being usable as a creative tool. We were talking about blending different kind of genres and coming up with new ideas and coming up with an edge to something, to create something that is not there yet, right? And I feel AI is always going to be limited in that, because it's going to take what's there and sort of try to mimic that or try to go in that direction. It's very hard for a person not being a creative person to express what they're looking for, what's in their head, and then try to get AI to do this, because it's not there yet, right? So, and it's kind of like the process that I go through writing music and scoring. I do see these pictures, these pieces of concept art, and something jumps into my mind, a certain feel to it, or a certain genre or collection of sounds or a certain mood. And it's very hard to put in words. The only thing I can actually express that is, sit down and start writing and experimenting with sounds and different kind of elements. So I feel that, AI will always sort of, to a certain degree, stay inside the box, where as a creative person, you often get the best results going outside of that box and, coming up with something new. And it sort of is relating to something that I read that Hans Zimmer wrote in one of the Facebook groups that he also regularly posts in, where he said, I'm not that afraid of AI developing. I'm watching it closely, but I'm not a composer at first. I'm a filmmaker at first. And I thought it was very striking, because that's where his added value comes in. He writes great music and he knows his way around that, and he's one of the best in his field when it comes to that. But he does really understand how movies work. He does understand how to use music to enhance a movie, and he can actually watch at an entirely silent movie and then get these ideas and know how to underline certain emotions. I think that's going to be very hard for AI to, cross these borders and sort of, look at all of these different kind of elements and tie them together and, make the right kind of calls. I think that's something that sets a creative person apart. Every single composer has their own history, has their own influences, has their own way of listening to stuff. That's very hard to mimic artificially. I think, it's gonna get great, and maybe for some of the more production side of music, it can get pretty far. So if you're doing corporate music videos, want to have a chill background loop that doesn't really distract. Then in probably in a couple of years, we get to a point where this is going to be good enough. But scoring an entire movie or scoring an entire video game, that also, by the way, needs to be entirely adaptive. It needs to respond to player actions, needs to be have different kind of layers, complexity. I'm not too worried about that, especially on the short term.
That's very interesting. That's a great response. And by the way, I just am seeing comments now. Amelia and Mahina both got ads. I swore I turned off the mid-roll ad.
Yeah, you told me you did.
I did. Well, I did.
I know it's like, I feel like YouTube's settings aren't always the best at listening to what you tell them to do.
Well, just so you guys know, we care, and we're taking at least one action every week to fix that.
Yeah. 100%.
And apparently she had a super chat get eaten. Well, that's amazing.
Aww.
She got charged $10 for a super chat that didn't show up. Well, tell us what you said in it, please.
Yeah,
and we'll double check and make sure that that either got to us or you get refunded or whatever.
100%.
Yeah. So, but we appreciate you all. Thank you for your support, and we swear that we're trying to fix the stupid ad situation. I do not want ads running in the middle of our podcast.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't make sense. You start to miss pieces of the conversation, so it doesn't work out very well.
That's stupid.
It's not we're
gonna fix it.
We're trying to have happen here.
And I feel like it hasn't always. Like this was not always been a thing.
Yeah, this is since this all started happening since there was an update to YouTube Studio and an update on the back end. And I don't know what they changed, but you know, changing the settings on the back end doesn't always fix it for some reason. So
we will get to the bottom of it. We appreciate your patience.
Yeah, Alex is going to go down to the YouTube headquarters, start banging on doors.
Yeah, I am. Thank you guys, though. Thank you so much. We do appreciate you, Mr. Lord Beavis, with the $2 super chat. Also, thank you guys. So
thanks so much.
Back on topic quickly, then, Jonathun. So you, in terms of like, let's say I do want to use AI to make a chill loop for the background of a corporate video. Do you? It doesn't sound like you have any kind of like moral objection to me doing that as a musician. Is that a safe assumption?
The only moral objection that I have that is happening a lot in these AI systems is that it's being trained on, you know, creative production that, you know, artists have not explicitly given permission to. So I think that's the one moral thing that is, to me, unexplainable, and it's happening a lot, and I feel that we're already beyond the point where we can actually fix this. So that's a pretty sad story, actually, because there are these big corporations now making a lot of money, you know, over the back of artists, and they don't see anything in return of that. And I think that's not really a fair situation, because, you know, we're moving money from and I'm not even talking about myself. We're moving money from all of these great artists across the entire world who, you know, have given up their lives practicing an instrument or, you know, coming up with really good stuff. And, you know, they've been going through dark times and, you know, getting up to a certain point where, you know, they can make a living out of it. And now a big corporation jumps in that has nothing to do with that entire market and comes up with a system where they, you know, say thank you for all your hard work and all your cool stuff and all your emotional baggage and everything else, and we'll take that and now make a lot of money out of it. I just feel that, you know, it's not a cool thing to do. Yeah. But I also feel that at this point, because we've never really set any boundaries for this whole thing, it's going to be very hard to reel back in and get it right back. So I think the best way is to sort of look to the future and see how we can sort of fix these elements, you know, in retrospect, or try to, you know, come up with better set of rules that doesn't entirely ruin the entire creative industry. Because, you know, that'd be a waste. You know, if we get, you know, if we start getting AI generated movies, then we get, you know, we go to the cinema and we see all of the same stuff and we listen to all of the same music, and it's all going to be, you know, another clone of this artist. And I don't think that's a very cool approach. I like to, like you said, Alex, you know, you like to discover new stuff. You like to find stuff that you've never heard before. And, you know, these things come from creative people who, you know, dare to go somewhere where nobody has gone before.
Yeah.
And we need those kind of people in our world, I think, to connect and as human beings.
As someone who loves leveraging AI, what are your thoughts as you hear this response, Skiva?
Well, I mean, I have a whole lot of thoughts here. One of the things is, as far as regulations concerned, we currently have a way too old school system for our current times, right? Things take a very, very long time to get any kind of legislation, any kind of you know, protection for artists, and it will take, you know, all of these companies know this, and they're quickly absorbing everything that they can as fast as they can before laws start to go into effect, right? Because it just takes forever. But AI is moving so fast that it's going to blow away. Like it's going to advance way faster than any law can ever get passed. And it's too bad. It really shows like part of you know how old and outdated our you know our system of passing laws is, and we really need to kind of advance with the technologies if we want to start to be able to control this stuff. You know, a lot of this stuff is such a gray area, because where this stuff isn't good enough now, it will certainly become so, and that's when things start to get more and more concerning. It's all a tough situation to really figure out, because you know, I don't think there will ever be a point where musicians stop making music and artists stop making art and all of these things because a computer can do it too. Because as humans, we live for expression. There is almost no other reason to be here than to express ourselves, right? So no matter how good a computer can do this stuff, we will always continue to do so. The problem here is the monetary part of all of this, right? So it's interesting. I mean, some AI in a way kind of uses current music and art as inspiration in a way, right? I mean, there's always the inspiration argument where people also wouldn't be able to come up with certain types of music had they not heard other things. And this is obviously a little bit different because it's absorbing all kinds of vast libraries and hundreds of thousands and millions of hours of tracks and pictures to be able to do what it does. But it's just interesting to sit back and watch all of this happen. And we're all trying to figure out what's morally okay and what's not, and how is this going to improve things or is it going to destroy things? And it's just it just blows my mind constantly, just trying to comprehend how fast this stuff is happening and what the future is going to look like for all of this stuff, because it's not just going to be art. It's not just going to be music. It's going to start happening. This is going to start to affect every single industry, from creative all the way down, in everything that we do. So it's a wild time to be alive, man. I just can't even, I'm constantly shocked. Yeah. I am always following AI as well as XR, right? And I just can't believe how fast this is all moving and what's happening. I do enjoy using the tools, though. Yeah.
You got anything to add to that, Jonathun?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, I definitely agree. I mean, the only thing that worries me is the Wild West element of it right now, and feeling that, I always like to refer to, Dr. Malcolm in Jurassic Park, when he says something along the lines of that being too busy to trying to see if you could, and not thinking about whether or not you should, right? Yep. And I feel that we're sort of in this Wild West race where one company goes against another and against another to showcase how far we can get, and it is exciting. But I don't think any of us is waiting for some sort of Skynet to being brought into the world. And I feel that right now we are not, that's all still being, too much being tucked away, right? So I want to think about the worst case scenarios so we can sort of make sure that those don't happen. And those worst case scenarios, they sound so far-fetched, but it's moving so fast at this rate that even something that is far-fetched right now, in a year from now, it might not be, and we might already be looking at it, right? And I feel a lot of people in government are too disconnected from the whole tech thing to actually being able to properly judge the impact that this is going to happen. And we've seen this with, cybersecurity as well, where a lot of the times, like you say, policy is running behind the facts. And I feel that's going to happen with AI as well. And it's going to have consequences that we cannot yet see at this point in time. And that's the kind of element that worries me, right? So what's the impact is going to be on those parts of the development and the execution that we have no clue about, right? What's this going to do? Having an entire, and we can already see this. Interesting YouTube channel is Rick Beato. If you're really deep into music, he has a lot of interesting thoughts, and he's very, a very great musician, and knows a lot about music theory and has a lot of experience. And I recall one of his videos a couple of years ago where he would explain that the experience of having proper harmony in music is sort of getting lost to current new generations, because a lot of pop songs don't go beyond having a root note and then stacking a melody on top. And And in itself, that's not a bad thing. For some songs, this works really well, and it creates for a very interesting song. But if all of the pop songs go into that direction, obviously you're training new generations of ears not being able to recognize harmony anymore. And that's one of the things that worries me, that if we go to a society where, the majority of the art we see is, the art that's being generated by AI and is inside that box, and we don't teach, new generations to think outside of that box, it will impact creativity of the upcoming generations. And that's one of the things that I feel, for me personally, could be an interesting issue, not in the coming 5-6 years, but maybe in, a decade or 2 decades.
Yeah. Well, and I guess if this is something that we're able to recognize, then like theoretically we could just train it on something more sophisticated, right? Like there's this project on YouTube that I love called DataBots, DADABOTS, DataBots, and it is a 24/7 365 constant procedurally generated death metal album that is trained primarily off of a band called Archspire, who I love, and they are a technical death metal band where their shit is off the chain. Like, it is crazy how fast they're playing, the time signatures that they're using, the melodies that they're squeezing into all this chaos and cacophony. And when you listen to the DataBots like procedurally generated song, it does stuff that people never would have even thought to do. Like it will like deconstruct the song in the most brutal way I've ever heard. And I'm like, whoa, like that's actually disgusting, So like, maybe we could get ahead of it and like potentially train these models to like, I don't know, have like different levels of sophistication, so that way we're not getting kind of stuck with all this bubblegum pop stuff that's uninspired and, training future generations of ears to not hear harmonies.
Yeah, but it's these kind of discussions that I'm often missing, right? So that we are sort of like constantly hurling forward, and these are interesting debates to have and to discuss and to think about, and I feel that we don't even get the time for that, because there's going to be a new bot coming out next week that's going to, do even more awesome and crazy stuff. And I think as a creative person, it's an interesting debate, and it's I'm not really that scared about it going there, because I feel there's always, maybe we get two kind of two kind of lanes of creative production, and we get the more AI procedural stuff, but we can do a lot of stuff art wise, but then I talked to a friend of mine who's, illustrator and a concept artist, and, I explained an idea, and I put a similar idea into an AI bot. I always pick his design over the AI bot design, because my inability to explain what I want to do is sort of like, my handicap when I'm talking to the AI. And he looks beyond what I'm actually asking him. He's actually,
his intuition.
And that's his brain, that's his experience, that's, his inspiration. And again, I think that's going to be very hard to mimic. It's going to get really close, but I think, the real connoisseurs are going to be able to distinguish those two things from each other.
Absolutely.
We'll see. I mean, as of right now, 100%. I can't imagine. So let me say that last year, not even a year ago, me and Tribe Grey Wolf were sitting there trying to come up with some AI generated versions of some background music for a stream that we do sometimes, and we went all night, and we came up after almost like 6 hours. We came up with like one loop that was decent enough to have something playing in the background. Now we have almost professional sounding recordings that that are almost really hard to tell if they're AI generated or human generated, and that was all within less than a year.
Yeah.
Imagine 50 years from now, imagine 100 years from now. Like I can't even fathom where this is going. Do you know what I mean? So like, where this is all very true right now, it's just happening.
You're basically
so
saying
fast.
There's no way that it's not going to reach a point where it's indistinguishable. That's what you're saying.
I mean, and that it's somehow that people train this in ways that like it can kind of guess by looking at the past of you and the things that you have done and the things you like to understand maybe what it is you're trying to get across, and kind of have that level of intuition that maybe someone like you were talking about was able to kind of figure out what you wanted, and it was really hard for you to get the AI to do it. Now, I don't know when this will be, but I just can't imagine with the level of how fast this is moving that it's not going to happen. Yeah. So we're all going to have a lot of things to think about and a lot of interesting problems to solve as far as how this stuff works. Now, right now, you can make all the AI stuff that you want. You are not allowed to copyright it in any way. So if you make some kind of a song, you make some kind of art, and you put it out there, anyone can take that and use it. Even if you put it on a professional album that you're selling somewhere and you're making a profit on it, someone else can just take it and use it. Because the Copyright Office, if they find out it's AI generated or they suspect it, they will not copyright it. And that goes for anything AI generated. You can make things, alter them to a certain point, be able to record that alteration and then prove it to the Copyright Office, and then they will grant the copyright. But as of right now, you can't just generate things and copyright them. I don't know where this is going to go ultimately. I don't know if they're going to change that. I don't know who owns this stuff. Like, I feel like the artist that it was trained on technically should own a lot of these things, right? But I just don't know where this is going, because it's all happening faster than anyone can analyze it. And be there to kind of defend the creative process of humanity. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't even know. My head kind of spins through this whole thing. I love watching it. I love being a part of seeing, like, and you trying the tools, and like, as someone that isn't an artist, I love being able to, like, do a really detailed prompt and be able to get something and feel like
that's, that's one of the things that I really love, is that it opens up, being creative and expressing yourself to a lot of people who would normally not really dabble with that, because they think they're not suitable enough, or they need extensive training, which obviously, by the way, is not the case, right? So if you want to be creative, you want to create art, go ahead and don't be afraid and do whatever feels right. I think that's the beauty of it. So yeah, definitely that's one of the angles, and for me it's a mixture of being very enticed by what I'm seeing and being very blown away sometimes with certain things, but also again the side notes of like you say, I can't really look behind the horizon, so I have no clue where this is going, where this is going to end. And it's to a certain degree also scary, right? So it's a mixture of excitement and being afraid to where this leads. And the being afraid part for me personally comes from, we see a lot of big tech companies, being in charge of this. And I don't think consolidating even more power into those companies is a very good idea, but that's just me personally, right? So, I have nothing against big tech companies in that sense, but I think if they're also absorbing all of these elements like art and the way we write stuff, and and being able to write and coming up with bots that can create news items and that kind of stuff, that puts a lot of control into commercial companies that have no real ethical bounds in that sense, as far as I'm concerned. So that's to me also a bit shaky, but again, it's super new. It's also very interesting, and it's very, it's a very strange day and age to experience all of this. It's definitely.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's one thing that is certain, and that is that this stuff is not going away. It's not going to stop. It's, it'll never be worse than it is today. So I do hope, that we are able to kind of like learn how to live with this technology and then use it as a tool to further be able to express ourselves as people, and be able to like really move our own creative juices forward as well, by using these things as tools, and not just leaning on them as a complete crutch.
Right. So. Well, and I'm willing to bet that while that's not going anywhere, neither is Jonathun, right?
Definitely
like
not.
we're gonna keep you, like, what's next for you? Like, are you staying within our VR circle? Like, are you gonna keep making music for VR games? Like, what can we expect from you?
I've actually, right now I'm also working with Combat Waffle Studios on, Silent North.
Oh, yeah.
as well as in the near future on Grim and doing some more work on Ghost of Tabor. I wrote the loading theme for the game last year, and it was a very fun experience working with that team, and they are rapidly growing and doing a lot of interesting things. So they asked me to stick around after and work with them on their new titles. So that's a lot of fun. So again, a lot of VR stuff with Vertigo as well, which I can't really give you anything more than than that there's stuff happening.
Stuff happening with Vertigo, heard.
Yeah. There's even some non-VR stuff for me on the radar. But again, it's not announced stuff, so I can't really talk about it yet. Right. But there's keeping busy, and I do love working in VR games a lot. I've been working on, I think 80% of my projects in the past 5-6 years have been VR games. When I put on the first time, I put on my headset and played the VR Doom 3 that they had on there. It was actually a very closed Gamescom meeting with Lucky and Mitchell back then, and they were still booting up. And friends of mine said, we are backing this Kickstarter. You have to go there. You actually have to experience it. Let's go there and make an appointment. Very small room, and there were like wires everywhere across the floor, and they had this headset being held together with duct tape and all kinds of. It felt very cyberpunkish to me, and I was the first to try it on, and then from that moment on, when they would turn it on, I was in that room in Doom. I felt that this was something that was going to stay. And then the whole trajectory working with Vertigo, it has been a ride. It's also a very interesting creative ride. A lot of unwritten rules that are in regular game development and sound design and doing music for regular games. They don't always apply in this field, right? So for me, sometimes it's fun to bump into a wall and find out that my trained approach isn't really working. We have to figure out something else. And sometimes it's a bit frustrating, but when you get to the point when you find a solution for it and it's actually working, there's a lot of satisfaction in there. So
well, and for us too, man.
Yeah, keep that going in VR space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And and really, like, we're all lucky to have you in the space, because we get to reap the benefits of all of that hard work and attention to detail when we play these games. And I'll while I'm thanking you on behalf of the community, I will also apologize on behalf of the community for maybe not noticing how good it is sometimes. Like, you're just too good that these things kind of go in one ear and right out the other. And I guess that's the way it's designed to be experienced, right? Like, we shouldn't be sitting there thinking to ourselves, wow, the audio design, and we should be shooting zombies. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure that credit goes where it's due.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. But it's also, I think I can speak for most of sound designers and composers in video games. That's not why we do it, right? So we usually work gamers ourselves, and if you're having a great experience and nothing takes you out of that immersion and experience, then I'm a happy person, right? So it's great if people notice it, and it's even better if it sticks around outside of the game and they think about it and it's an experience that they carry with them and a great memory. But hitting that immersion, that's the main gist of it, and that's the only thing that matters, and it's part of everything else that's going in there, the 3D models, the entire code team coming up with all the systems that drive the audio, all of these elements that come together. So it's just one piece of the puzzle, and if it fits and it gets the job done and it works, that's the best payoff, right?
Well, it is. It's working, man. The games you've been a part of are great games, and we're so grateful for the work that you've done in allowing us to have these amazing experiences. So thank you very much for that. And thank you again for joining us as a guest today. It's been the first real deep dive into the audio perspective that we've had on this show. So, I think that it was really good that we had you as a guest, and who knows? Maybe once you ship another awesome game, we'll get you back and we can dive into some more details. How does that sound?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're just going to set the tone here as we all say goodbye to Jonathun Den Wijngaarden. Thank you for your incredibly long name and for all of your contributions to the VR space. Don't be a stranger. Reach out to us anytime, and we'll talk to you soon.
I will. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Say goodbye to Jonathun.
Bye.
Bye. And he's gone. Just like that.
That was awesome, man. It's funny that, like, it's pretty rare that one person has touched so many of your favorite games, right? Like, he's just done so much of the music and sound design to so many of the games I love, you know, Ghosts of Tabor and After the Fall and Arizona Sunshine and Seventh Guest, and like, it just blows my mind that like I don't know. This was just a great episode. I was super stoked to be able to have Jonathun on as a guest.
Yep.
And hopefully, I just can't wait to see what he does next, man.
Yeah. Well,
because I loved it.
You will. And that's the best part, is we all will. We're all going to see what he does next. We can't wait for it. Yeah, that was really, really good. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us for this live episode today. You know, Red/Ace here in the chat, Snow Toad and Silver Nexus, Duggars K, Amelia Faust, Genesee Quad getting up in here, Sean P. Tattoos as well. Thank you so much for becoming a Between Realities fan. Mr. Lord Beavis and Paradise Decay, Looper the Underground Game Cat got up in here, Beat Saber Rita, of course. Thank you so much for watching today. Thomas McNostril, dude, like all of you guys, thank you so much.
Sean P. Tattoos, real quick mention. So we're going to talk about that state of play because I want to cry. Dude, I just want to say I am so floored at, like, I was really convinced that Sony was going to like hit a home run here and they were going to do everything they could to like really support the PSVR 2 and bring it to the next level. And now they're not even giving their first party titles VR support. It just blows my mind. It makes me so mad. I have lost so much respect for Sony and so much trust in them. I will say that it doesn't mean that Impact Reality and Flat to VR Studios is going to abandon PSVR 2. So we are still hoping to do a lot there. You know, if Sony isn't going to do it, we want to be there. But dang it, man, it just really bums me out. Sorry,
it's a bummer.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Astrobot, man.
Listen,
what the heck?
all we can really do right now is acknowledge it. Okay, like we don't have time to start unpacking this.
I know.
We're gonna acknowledge it, and we'll say yes. We're all very bummed, right? Astrobot is that was like almost our mascot, you know?
Dude,
I
know.
mean? Like as a VR community. So yeah, whatever. We can all
sad
collectively be sad about it over the weekend, I guess. Phil Marshall, hey dude, Blair, Anti-Cleric, hey man, it really means a lot that you tune in every week.
Heck yeah, dude. Thanks for being here. Thank you all for being here.
For real.
Love you guys.
Yeah, Skiva.
And girls.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
What are we doing next week?
Next week, we are going back to YouTube land. And we are going to have on Chris Quits Reality. If you haven't seen Chris's content, it is some of the most physical, comedic YouTube content out there. I can imagine how many headsets this dude is broke because he just smashes everything. He's jumping on things. He's flying through. Like, he is absolutely just off the wall, and he's such a nice dude. So I can't wait to have him on.
Chris Quits Reality really pushes the envelope in terms of like what you think is possible with VR gameplay and like content creation. So we're super stoked to get him on and to pick his brain a little bit and to have him share some stories about all of the stuff that's happened. Because to Skiva's point, I would not be surprised if he has broken thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's going to be an awesome episode, and I think it's almost kind of an exclusive. Right? Like, I don't think Chris does a lot of this kind of thing.
I don't think he does.
You know,
I don't think
like
he does.
We've been talking to him for a long time about making this happen, so we're pretty stoked about it. So I think that's about it, right?
That's about it, man.
I got a flight to catch.
Oh, heck yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I got some VR to play.
Hell yeah. Well, you know, links in the description below to all of Jonathun's work. So please go through there, click there, follow him on social media because you know he's going to be doing a lot of awesome projects coming up.
Yeah, we got his Spotify links and everything. Go listen to some of the music. Like I know it's hard sometimes when you're fighting off hordes of thousands of zombies to really sit and appreciate the music. So maybe go on there and kind of just listen to some of the soundtracks. tracks and really appreciate the type of work and craftsmanship he's put into composing these tracks.
Just listen to your character gargling while the juggernaut picks you up. It's beautiful. Laszlo216, thanks again, man, for being here. Join our Discord. There's a link in the description below, and give ClassyGrandma some company. I think that's it. Awesome. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you in a week with Chris Quits Reality.
Bye-bye.
Until then, bye.